Hi, this is Steve Green, the creator and host of Five Alarm Task Force, the podcast, and the president of the new nonprofit corporation, Five Alarm Task Force Corp. I'm pleased to announce that our website donation buttons have gone live. The new website URL will be coming up later this week or into next, but we want to have it ready for you. Some of it will look familiar, the way the old website was, and there'll be new information there, especially about our purpose and our mission with the new nonprofit. We boil it down with a great motto that our good friend and frequent guest on this show, Sean Duffy, created, which is one family, one mission, first responders helping each other. We all know, but sometimes we kind of tuck it away in a dark, quiet spot in our minds, that just because we're firefighters, law officers, paramedics and EMTs, that people see us maybe as superheroes without the capes. Nevertheless, we're human with human frailties, just like everybody else that we work to help. And sometimes we ourselves find ourselves, our families, in dire need. And the whole purpose behind creating this nonprofit for this 5th season of the podcast is to give something back. When I started the podcast, the whole goal was to give back to the avocation for me, having been a volunteer, that I loved so much, even though I only had 8 years in before my injury took me out. Nevertheless, the whole goal of the podcast was to try to give something back to this industry that I truly do love and through which I define myself as a person. But I didn't think it was enough. I thought that we had to do more. And so, talking over with friends and advisors, we decided to set up this nonprofit. And our goal is really but one: to help firefighters and hopefully other first responders who are in dire need. Now, if you go to the website, and across the top menu, you'll see our mission. Read that. They'll tell you what we're trying to do, and there'll be a subpage that you can go to that tells you how to submit your story if you need help. We're here for you. We want to be. But the only way we can help other first responders, especially our firefighters, is if you, our listeners and viewers, make a donation. We're getting our first shirts in. It's a small order. We need to see how they're going to work out. But we'll post them, the pictures of those, in our store on the website. And then there'll be either a souvenir you can purchase, or it'll be a part of the giveaway program that we're going to have, a reward program for every donation, basically. No donation is too small, and certainly no donation is too large. But we're going to have categories for what we call civilian, non-affiliated donations. And then we're going to have a separate corporate scroll of honor for fire service industries that will make a donation to our nonprofit. Just in case you're wondering, yes, we are fully established with the IRS as a 501c3 not-for-profit organization. We'll file all the paperwork every year that tells everything we do with the money. When you make a donation through the website, you'll have a choice to contribute to either our operations fund, which helps us put out the podcast and operate the business in and of itself, and there'll be the foundation fund. And it is from that fund that we will disperse funds to help firefighters after we vet stories. Now, I'm not vetting these stories by myself either. I have 2 great friends, well established in the fire service, Captain Andrew Starnes and Nick Higgins, who is the editor and co-founder of the Firehouse Tribune. And together we will work to vet a story that comes to us for need. We won't be able to help every single person, and we won't be giving millions of dollars away, I don't think. But we will try to give something that will help financially that firefighter, his or her family, whatever, in that dire need. So this is still a partnership, just like the podcast. We produce it, and we hope you listen to it. We now are on Zoom in video, and we hope you watch those as well on our channel, 5 Alarm Task Force Corp on YouTube. But it's a two-way street. For us to be able to help our brothers and sisters, we're going to need your help if you're in that position. This is a difficult time for us to make this decision to start this nonprofit. But it's also been an amazingly difficult time for our brothers and sisters. And you probably, many of you who are listening, know of what I'm speaking about. And I felt determined that even through this COVID crisis, there are people with hearts and cares out there that see in the news every single morning, noon, and night how first responders are answering every emergency call that they can. Look at our brothers and sisters in the Northwest, from California all the way up to Oregon and Washington, across into some of the central western states, the Dakotas, Montana, Wyoming. The first responders don't say, no, we can't, we're busy, we're not going to show up for those fires. They pack up, head to the main camp, and do what they have to do. From our biggest urban cities to our smallest rural volunteer fire departments, our first responders have never shirked their responsibility in a time of crisis. And good Lord knows we are in a time of crisis right now. So I hope you'll take this message to heart. We're not fully up yet, so to speak, with all the gadgets and marketing tools for the podcast and for our program of helping, but we know we can get started now. So feel free, you do not have to have a PayPal account to make a donation. You can use any standard form of payment as you wish. And please check with your tax advisors to determine if you'll be able to take this donation as a tax write-off. We can't tell you that, but your tax advisor can. So for the past 4 seasons, and as we're getting ready to launch episode 5 of the 5th season, we thank you. We hope you'll continue to listen and watch us. And we also hope you're going to become our partners in 5 Alarm Task Force Corp by making your donation, big or small, whatever you can do, so that we can turn around and help our brothers and sisters. Stay safe and stay well. God bless us all. Hello and welcome to another episode of 5 Alarm Task Force. I'm your host, Steve Green, and we are happy to say that today is another one of our installments of the show, of the segment called Make Do, with my friend, Captain Nick Peppard and Sean Duffy. And we have a special guest today who is a mutual friend of basically the 3 of us. And I'm going to let them tell you about it. So right now, sit back, enjoy this audio and video lesson, and we're going to start with my good friend, Captain Nick Peppard. Nick?
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, Nick Peppard here. Welcome back to the show. I am a captain up in Northwest Florida at the Hollywood Bar Fire District. Been on the job for about 15 years. Student of the craft. I met Sean and Steve and Joe through some teaching endeavors with my little side training business, North Florida Fire and EMS Training, LLC, and been fortunate to become good friends with these guys. Look forward to a great conversation today. Definitely happy to be here. Happy to talk about some thermal imaging stuff today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sean.
All right. For those of you who don't know, my name is Sean Duffy. Been in the fire service for about 15 years now. I work for the city of Venice in Southwest Florida. And, the purpose of today is really to touch on a piece of equipment that maybe is kind of forgotten about or just misunderstood in the fire service. So roughly 80% of us work in a suburban area where we're limited staffing and things like that, but we still have the same job to do. So today we're going to talk with Captain Joe DeVito of Fort Myers Beach, and he's going to give us a little insight on thermal imaging cameras and how to best utilize them so that we can be more effective for what we do on the fire ground. So he's going to go over some thermal imaging terminology and talk about some other various aspects of that camera so that we're all on the same page. But the biggest thing I want everybody to understand is this is just a real brief overview. There is a lot of information out there about this particular tool that we have. So if you want some more information, by all means, after this is over, feel free to reach out to Joe and he'll get you squared away. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce my good friend, Captain Joe DeVito, and go ahead and take it away for us, bud.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me. My name is Joe DeVito, currently a captain Fort Myers Beach Fire Department. I've been in the service for about 15 years, had 5 years on as a volley as well, and actually even worked as a medic in a transport company here in Lee County. I've been blessed with all the opportunities I've had. And one thing I'm going to say to open up is just like you guys, remember that what we're doing is for a purpose. It's to help people get better the way that the people who took us under their wing did for us. So, I'm grateful for that. And I guess I'll just jump right in unless you guys have anything.
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So one thing I was talking about with everybody is the first thing we want to do is kind of get some of these items or topics under discussion on thermal imaging itself. And a big thing is we get all kinds of questions. We realize that thermal imaging is extremely underutilized and undereducated tool. Whenever I teach, I always say, all right, who here has taken a forcible entry class? And the whole class raises their hand. Who here has taken a hose advancing class, a hose class? Everybody raises their hand. Ladders class, same thing, right? Who's taken thermal imaging class? 5 people raise their hand, Even when the people come and sell us the thermal imager, what do? They press the green button. They say, this is how you turn it on. You hold it down for 3 seconds, it turns off. This is how you change your battery. Now go use it. And that's not real. I mean, if all that I used my cell phone for is to dial a number and press send, I'm not using that tool to its fullest capability. And the tool is only as good as an end user. An example is if you gave me a jackhammer and told me to go out and dig up a driveway, I'm pretty sure I can do it, but all the cars around me will probably be trashed, because I have no idea what I'm doing with it. And the same exact thing with the thermal imager. So just some things to talk about with thermal imaging is to start talking about the field of view. You need to remember that the field of view is much different than our field of view. A field of view is the area that a camera can see in. So we as human beings can see 170 degrees by 135 degrees. The higher number is always the wider number. All right. So that's peripheral vision from side to side. I could see both walls when I'm sitting here. Okay. Now a dog can only see about 55 degrees. That's a much narrower field of view. That's why they always say never approach a dog from the side because they can't see you. They're going to get startled and they're going to bite. Okay. Well, what we need to remember is that we're looking through a thermal imager with a dog's eyes, not ours. So our field of view is 170 by 35. An average camera field of view is 50 by 30. I'm just throwing numbers out there to make it relative. All right. So we actually are looking through a dog's eyes. This is going to be really important when it's come to size up because we need to realize that just because we see that whole building or that whole structure with our eyes, we still need to scan the whole structure with the camera so we can make sure that we're getting all that information that building is giving us in a thermal picture. So make sure you're actually getting the whole picture inside, not just what your eyes see. You got to do what the camera sees. So that's the field of view. A little bit about resolutions. They have 3 main resolution cameras out there. 364 by 288 is what I have with my ISG X380. It's a tri-mode, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. 320 by 240 is pretty much the common run-of-the-mill newer resolution out on the market. And then 160 by 120 is like my old Scott TIC that I had back in the day. So talk about what resolution means to us. If you take a camera that has a resolution of 160 by 120, you can see a child's hand from about 7 feet away. All right, and actually make out that it's a hand. You may see an anomaly and not know what it is, but from 7 feet away with that resolution, you'll be able to see, hey, that's a hand. If you have a 320 by 240, which is what the majority of the cameras are out there, you're going to get about a 15-foot away picture of that hand. So you can actually say, okay, that's what I'm looking for. And then, of course, 364 by 288 will give you 20 feet to detect what that picture is. So the resolution is better. And we always say, would you rather watch the Super Bowl on a 1970 black and white TV, or would you rather see it on the new LED high def, 1 terabyte speed TV or whatever they are? They're so fast now, but they have no lag and they have no image distortion. So of course that's going to be the best. Let's then talk about some refresh rates. A refresh rate is how a camera can reset itself to see the next frame of a picture. All right. So we see at 30 hertz. That's what our eyes see. All right. Most cameras now are 60 hertz, or the big cameras. 60 hertz is good because that means that it's actually faster than what our eyes see. Anything lower than what our eyes see is going to create a lag or shuttering, or in the thermal imaging world, a nuking. And I give an example like this. If it's under 30, for those of you guys who are probably my age, when you get down to tie your shoe and you get up too fast and you get dizzy, what do? You close your eyes and you reset your camera. Okay, it's the exact same thing with the thermal imager. If you have a low refresh rate on your thermal imager, as you're scanning, if you scan too fast, the thermal imager will shutter and it'll freeze. So then you have to make sure that you go back to where it froze at, so you don't miss anything in that frame. So that's why refresh rate is important. And then we go into here, we have modes, different modes of a camera. We have high sense mode and low sense mode. Every camera is different, which is a real problem out on the market. And the reason why is because not everybody buys all the cameras at one time. It's not in their budgetary means. So I may ride truck one day that has a FLIR K55, and then I may hop on engine 1 the next day, and that has a ISG 380, right, which has 3 modes. And then I may hop on engine 2 the next day, and that has a Bullard on it. All 3 give different modes, different pictures, different temperatures. So it's really hard when you're trying to get a common ground. That's why it's so important to know your tools. So when you're looking at modes, I kind of explain it as 2 modes, and I'll just do the 2-mode camera for now. We have a high sense mode and a low sense mode. I say the high sense mode is under 500, and that's not the real number. I'm just using that for explanations, okay? It all depends on what kind of camera you have. So if it's 0 to 500, that means high sense mode. That's your grayscales. That means you can stand up and you can walk to where you need to go because the heat's good, all right? Then when it goes over 500 degrees, it goes to the low sense mode, which means you should get down low, which means your tactics should change. Because what happens now is everybody knows from fire science, it goes to 0 to 500 in minutes, but 500 to flash in seconds. That's why it's so important to realize that when that modes change, so should your tactics, and you should think about conditioning the room you're in. So we kind of hit field of view, resolution, refresh rates, high sense, low sense. All right, let's talk about thermal contrast and thermal inversion. Thermal inversion is like if I'm outside in the bay and you point your thermal imager at me, I'm gonna be very bright. Okay, that's because I'm hotter than the environment that I'm in. Okay, what happens though is that when I go into a fire room, I'm now going to be darker due to I'm still the same temperature, but now the environment is darker, is hotter than I am, which makes me darker in that camera view. So thermal inversion is important, especially in the days of cold smoke training and training in the bay where we don't have the heat. What happens is that when the thermal imagers first came out, they were actually scanning for victims, and they were walking over victims because they didn't see that bright person laying on the floor. They were actually gray due to thermal inversion. So that's important to remember. And then I think the other thing is thermal contrast. What thermal contrast means, and this is a great way to put it, if you're in a room that's 98.6 degrees and you are 98.6 degrees, we will not pick you up in your camera. And the reason why is because there's no contrast inside that room. So what you need to do is if you walk in and you don't really have a lot of contrast inside that room, or you see like everything's kind of similar in color, the more water you spray, the more contrast you will actually start to make, because now you're getting the cold onto the materials while the room is still going to be pretty much the same temperature. The materials are going to cool down as they absorb the water, and then that'll create your thermal contrast. And the reason why I'm trying to hit on some of these topics is because a lot of people don't have any classes in thermal imaging like we're talked about. So they may not even know what any of these things are. Granted, this is totally like a Cliff's Notes version, and I just threw this at you, and I'm hoping that you can hit it out of the ballpark, but there's so much to it that you really need to learn more and more about it. I guess I'll ask you guys real quick. Do you guys have anything on those quick 5 points?
No, I thought, it's a pretty quick overview. Like I said in the beginning, there's a plethora of information out about thermal imaging cameras, but for the purpose of today and what we want to get at is we just want people to have that basic understanding so that when they do get on scene and they are doing their size up, which you're going to talk about here in a few minutes, that they do truly understand what it is they're looking at, and they're making the best decisions that they can, being the safest possible, rather than, the rep coming in who wants to sell you a camera just saying, hey, turn it on, point, look, and that's all you need to do. A lot of people tend to read the little temperature down at the bottom of the screen, and that's all they're taught to do. So I think, you did a pretty good job touching on all the other aspects that come into play with that, and not just that temperature at the bottom, and understanding that every camera is different. Unfortunately, that's going to take some groundwork on everyone's part to kind of dig in, find out what camera you have, and do a little bit of research and see what it can and cannot do.
So a few things on that before we move on. Andy Starnes has a book that's out he did with Max Firebox that has all of the thermal imagers in it with all of their mode ranges, their temperatures and everything, and when they switch over. So that's the first thing I'd suggest for you guys to look into if you guys haven't had one yet. The next thing I like to talk about is the direct temperature measurement. The DTM is that little number down there. As far as I'm concerned, that should never be utilized in a fire. All right. And the reason why is because the convection waves can be much warmer than what the wall is reading, because the wall's a surface. It only reads surface temperatures. The temperature bar on the side is going to read your convection waves. Your DTM is only going to measure surface temperatures. So if I'm pointing it at this wall, right, I may have a lot of red in that camera, but my direct temperature measurement may only read 120 degrees. And the reason why is because the wall has not had time to absorb the convection waves or the heat from the convection waves as they travel past. So that's a huge thing that you should know. That's good for like mechanical, electricity, stuff like that. That's what I would use the DTM for. Sorry.
All right, did you touch on the situational versus decision making real quick before we get into it? Because I know a lot of people have this misconception that, I don't need to take the big thermal imager off the truck when I'm doing these things because I have one built into my air pack, or I have these small C.L.U.E.S thermals or whatever variation they have. Sometimes thermal imaging is thermal imaging. That's the way people view it. They don't understand the difference. So if you don't mind, before we get into the size up and everything, can you just touch on the difference of those two cameras and why, when we're trying to do our size up and gathering the size up clues, we need a decision-making camera, not a situational awareness camera?
Okay. So before I get into those, because both of those things happen to deal with the 5 topics that we went over, so it's actually brilliant. Nick, is there anything I missed on those 5 topics that you want to discuss?
No, I think you hit it pretty well, Joe.
Okay. All right. So situational awareness versus the decision-making cameras. All right. I talked about one of the biggest problems here is the refresh rate. All right. These small imaging cameras, like the ones you have in your G1 and MSA, your C.L.U.E.S imagers, your Scott sites, your FLIR K1s, FLIR K2s. The reason why these are awareness level cameras, one of the reasons is because their refresh rate is so low, as low as 7 hertz. All right. I don't know if any of you guys have ever used a K1 or a K2, but as you do your scan with it, it shutters instantly, very often. All right. I'm telling you that if my kid's in that room, all right, and you're going in there to grab them with a SEEK or with a K2, you know, I'm going to be like, hey, that's not going to work. And you grab the K55 or the Bullard or whatever else off the truck, because I want to make sure you have the best refresh rate. I want to make sure you have the best resolution. So the main things about these is the differences in resolution and refresh rates. I got a thing right here I'll just hit off real quick. The field of view, of course, is different too, but the SEEK is 320 by 240 with a 15 hertz refresh rate. The V320 has 320 by 240, which is good, but then it has a 25 hertz refresh rate, which is still slower than our eyes. The MSA G1s has a good refresh rate of 30. Of course, the big ones now we're using have 60 hertz, but it's only 220 by 170 as far as the resolution. So you're losing a lot of the distance in searching and stuff like that. The Scott site is 160 by 120 with 9 hertz resolution. The FLIR K2 is 160 by 120 with 9 hertz. And the FLIR K1 is 160 by 120 with 9 hertz as well. So you can see that those are great awareness level cameras. And by that, I mean, they're going to help you find your way out. They're going to help you find flow path management and stuff like that. But I don't recommend utilizing them in search and RIT and stuff like that, where you actually need the good refresh rate, while you want the good resolution. You want to be able to actually look at and see what you're looking for. I think that it's awesome that people have so many affordable thermal imagers for awareness level now for people. Michael Whitty did a great research project, and you guys should check it out. But he actually said that I'm going to say 70% of firefighters without a thermal imager were not able to find an exit. But guess what? With a thermal imager, 100% were able to find their way out. So to me, that's the reason to have a thermal imager in the first place. So even if you don't have one of those top-notch thermal imagers that are out there, those decision-making thermal imagers, having one of these on you is definitely going to be a benefit, but just know its limitations like everything else.
Yeah, it's a tool, and you know, a lot of people think that they're all created equal, but the truth is they're really not. There's just like any tool, right? I mean, are you buying the you know, Walmart brand wrench, or are you buying the Snap-on wrench? You know what I'm saying? There's definitely a difference in quality and in capabilities, and I think that's you really hit on it really well, Joe. I mean, kind of bringing awareness to some of the differences that are out there with different type of cameras, and kind of summing up what we're looking for when we're talking about, you know, thermal imaging. And I think that segues really beautifully into kind of where we're going next, and that is size up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to throw something in as the old fart in this group here.
No, the wise one.
I want to compare it to, you know, would we have loved to have a TIC in my day? Oh, believe me, I've thought about it. My 8 years before I got hurt, I can consider probably 50 calls that we could have used the TIC on. But I will say that here's the difference. In my day, we had to come along to do extrication with. But shortly after I was out came the hydraulic tools. So what are you going to work with on a real major extrication. Do we still want to play with your pry bar and your come along, or do you want to get that hydraulic tool out and get your victim out from whatever their situation is? But either one, you still have to know how it works to use it successfully. And that's true for any tool in the fire service that we're going to use. You can't have a one look, oh, I get it, or one read, I know the whole thing now attitude. We have to be schooled and be willing to learn, as we've talked about. All three of us, all four of us have talked about before. A firefighter has to be willing to continually learn their skills.
And
Well,
that goes down. Go ahead, brother.
I was going to say, to your point, Joe and Steve, both of you kind of hit on this. You know, the title of the show, you know, the segment here is Make Do, right? We're talking about, you know, kind of being able to maximize minimal resources.
Exactly.
So why, you know, for me as a company officer, why would I not want to have the advantage and the benefit of a great tool like a thermal imaging camera to enhance and to make me more, you know, more effective on the fire ground? You know, in the suburban fire setting, you know, we typically don't have a ton of staffing a lot of times, and we're running fires where our second due, like I said, maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes out. You know, if I can make a more educated decision, how much more aggressive can I commit my resources if I have a better idea what I'm looking at, right? If I understand what I'm looking at and I understand, you know, how to make the most out of my tools, then it's going to make me more effective as a company officer. It's going to make my engine company more effective on the fire ground, make better decisions. So that's, you know, to the point of the whole, you know, Make Do Suburban Fireman podcast sub-series here, you know, that is kind of what we're talking about, right? So we're trying to take this particular topic is thermal imaging, right? And enhance our understanding of how it works and how to use it on the fire ground and to maximize our efficiency and our effectiveness as firefighters.
Right.
You know, Nick, we talk so much. I don't even know if I said this yet, but you know, it comes down to accountability as well. You know, if you don't know how to use something, you need to go out and research that product. You need to learn how to utilize it, especially if it's on your rig. Guess what? In the end, it's your responsibility. If you're waiting for somebody to teach you how to do something, you might as well go sit in the recliner all day. You know, it's not real life. You know, you need to go out there and you need to just get your hands on things. You know, if you think you're going to bang on a door one time, like Steve said, and it forces fine, you're never going to do it again, you know, until it happens, it's crazy. It's not real, you know? And the other thing is progress. You know, I know people are afraid of progress and we're a tradition-based career, and I agree with that. However, we need to realize that we still be having horse-drawn carts, right? And pumpers, we had to pump by hand. But guess progress happens, right? We can either utilize it, right? Or it can pass us by. Now in London, they actually had a fire department utilize or in England rather, they had a fire department not utilize a thermal imager during a search. A person died and they being sued by that family because that family paid for a piece of equipment that has been proven to improve effectiveness and efficiency of the fire service that you chose not to utilize.
Wow.
So look at the world we live in, bro. It's a different world,
Right.
you know, and you're going to be held accountable to know your job, know your job. And and listen, we cannot know everything. All right. I don't know half the stuff that I should know about building construction and forcible entry and, you know, because there's so much out there. But we also have paramedicine. I mean, look at what we do. We just don't fight fire anymore, right? Firefighter, paramedics, elevator extrication, car wrecks extrication, trench rescue, rope rescue, right? We wear so many hats that it's hard to know everything. But guess what? It is your responsibility to have a little bit of knowledge about everything and then be really good at something. So find something you're passionate about and be really freaking good at it. This way you could teach others around you and you could be that person they come to.
Great point.
Yeah, I just before we move on, because I think this is going to tie in with our size ups. Like we all are taught how to do a size up at some point, right? That's common knowledge. Get off the truck, do a size up. Like we get that beat into our heads. So one of the things that you guys were touching on that I found pretty interesting is we use the words effectiveness and efficiency quite frequently, but we need to understand that those are two very different things, right? The question is, are we doing things right, or are we just doing the right things? And the difference is in its intended purpose. And I think for Size Up, what we're going to be talking about with your C.L.U.E.S acronym and things like that is, hey, okay, repetition, right? Get off the truck, do 360, nothing showing, side Alpha Bravo, whatever, and we just kind of go through the motions. That's efficiency, right? Effectiveness is when we can enhance that, right? And say, hey, all right, I know these are all the things I'm supposed to do. How can I better do them, get to that point quicker, and make this easier so that all of us together are doing things that make sense in a more efficient manner, that gets the job done effectively.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense, right?
Well,
but that's what we really need to focus on.
Duff, I'm not a smart man, but I'm going to use this and let me know if this is kind of what you're thinking. Okay. Getting the hose line off the truck to the fire is what? Is that efficiency, right? And then actually knowing when to open the nozzle and when to spray the water. Would that be efficient? Is that what you're saying? I'm trying to break it down to a person's term. Something they could relate.
Yeah, so I actually think I kind of said that backwards now thinking about it. When we think about effectiveness, that's just about accomplishing a task, right? Mm-hmm. The efficiency is about performing the task in the most, in the best possible manner. Right. And that's the difference between the two. So great, we can pull a line to the front door, but did we go around a bunch of different things? Did we utilize the length of our line to the best advantage? There's all those things.
Did we set it up for success on the outside?
Right. So when it comes to thermal imaging and the Size Up clues that you're about to talk about, that's really the point that we need to make. We all have the capability of turning on a thermal imager and pointing it and looking at something and saying, nope, there's no fire over there, or it looks cool over here. That's fine. But how do we become more efficient with it to where when we turn it on, we understand exactly what we're looking at, and that picture that we see leads us to do our next thing rather than doing 5 other things just to do the one thing we should have done to begin with.
Brilliant. That makes sense. Absolutely. Absolutely. So hopefully when people watch this, they'll actually understand a little bit better what a thermal imager can do for them, and learn a little bit how to utilize it in different situations, and especially here in Size Up. So I guess we should open up with the Size Up portion of the class, right? Does anybody have anything to say about what we hit on so far, or are we pretty much good? I know it's kind of like go ahead, man.
Yeah, take it away, brother. I'm ready to, let's talk some Size Up.
All right. Yeah, that was kind of like a blitz of information thrown at people, right? But it's basic stuff. I can't teach you how to force a door over Zoom. It's not going to work, but I can give you some information to maybe make your job easier, stuff like that. So let's talk about C.L.U.E.S, okay? C.L.U.E.S in your 360 is an acronym that I made up because I had no idea what to do when I became an officer. All right. They kind of just threw me the keys and said, all right, you're in charge. So I showed up on scene and I looked around and I said, all these people are now looking at me, and now I'm responsible to make these decisions. And I have all these degrees, all these certifications, all these classes, and I still don't really know what I'm doing. All right. And part of it, I guess, is the career that we've become. Part of it may be the lack of live fire drills. Maybe a lot of it is to fire behavior too, where we don't really know much about fire behavior. They actually took fire chemistry out of our classes here as an officer. So I don't really understand that. I mean, this is the only career we work in where we never really do our job, but we get certified to do it. Right? I mean, anybody here fire instructors?
Yeah.
You guys, yeah. All right. So what's the first thing you guys always say? Don't put out my fire. Right? Don't put out my fire. So, all right, cool. And now they're like, all right, cool. Now we go out there, and what's the first thing these people do is what? They go ahead and they spray just enough water to what? Steam the whole place and cause the thermal inversion, right? It's because that's what they taught, and that's their muscle memory. You know, if you go for an air conditioning job, you're going to work on air conditioners, and then you get certified on it. You know, you go for beauty salon, you're going to learn how to cut hair, and you get certified in it. This is actually the only job, I think, where we get certified without ever actually doing our job. So just something to think about. That's another reason why we need to go out and learn so much. So I reached out to a few people, and Kill the Flashover was unbelievable. I learned so much information from them on fire behavior, about fire dynamics, just about how to fire control. It was unbelievable, and it blew my mind. It definitely made me better understand the enemy that I'm fighting. Then I reached out because when I first got in the fire department down here, I said, hey man, what's that thing up front? And they said, oh, it's a thermal imager. I said, cool, what's it do? And they said, oh, you point it at the wall after a fire and it shows you where the hot spots are. And I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty cool, you know? So then I reached out to Chief Andy Starnes, who took me under his wing and kind of showed me so much information. You think those past 15 minutes blew your mind, right? But I learned so much information from him that I'm able to now make educated, intelligent decisions based off the information that camera's giving me, which before I would have just used for what? Point and shoot. Because why? That's all my department knew, was that it's used in overhaul. Hence my class that I teach is thermal imaging, not just for overhaul anymore. Makes sense now, right? So I got off and realized, okay, in officers' classes, they teach you what? Cole was wealth, Wallace was hot, and that's your size up command structure. Well, I realized that as a small department, which is who we're talking to, right? We don't have 15 apparatus arriving on scene within 15 minutes. We may have our next unit 5 minutes out, 7 minutes out, maybe more. So I said, okay, I need something that works for me, because Cole was wealth and Wallace was hot is made for a person standing at a BC buggy with a checklist and a checkboard, just knocking things out. Okay, that's not good for the worker bee, and that's what we are. So we need to do a size up, we need to do a 360, we need to do forcible entry, we need to do fire attack, we need to do search. All right. So I said, I need something that's going to make it easy for people to remember inside of a span of control. Our span of control is 3 to 7. Our ideal is 5. C.L.U.E.S is 5. And it stands for conditions, location, utilities, exposures, and survivable spaces. And C.L.U.E.S is the acronym that we're going to be discussing. How about after this break, Steve?
Okay. All right, folks, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with my team members, Nick Peppard and Sean Duffy, and our guest, Captain Joe DeVito, right after these words. Please stay tuned. And for those of you on the video, we are right back. Those of you on the audio, we are happy to be back after this break with my two partners here, Nick Peppard and Sean Duffy, and our guest today, Captain Joe DeVito. And Captain Joe was talking to us about his acronym for using a TIC camera, C.L.U.E.S. He just mentioned what they were, and we're going to continue with him right now on how to use that acronym to do a better size up. So Joe, to you, please.
All right. Thanks again. So like we talked about a little bit, C.L.U.E.S stands for conditions, location, utilities, exposures, survivable spaces. It's also the first size up that uses thermal imaging, and that's going to be under the location part, which we'll discuss. So keep in mind that a thermal imager and all this stuff is still not going to replace your knowledge of the fire science and the fire behavior. You still need to know these things. It's just going to make it where it's easier for you to get readings behind surfaces we were never able to before. And I'll show you some pictures here to actually probably kick it home for you. So to start off with conditions, our conditions are going to be smoke, fire, and wind. Smoke is always first because smoke is going to tell us so much more than what fire ever will. I know it's hard because human nature is to look for the shiny stuff. We see fire, it's oohs and ahs, but it's not really going to tell us as much as smoke will. Smoke can tell us which way it's traveling. It's going to tell us the color, velocity, density, right? Volume. volume, velocity, density, color. We can read all that to find out, okay, is this smoke near the fire? Is it going in this direction? Is this being pushed out? Is it due to heat or is it due to pressure? And different things like that. Whereas fire is just going to be, here's the fire, this is where it's at. It's probably going to be vented if we see it, right? So you can't always use that either if it's already vented. And then wind. Wind is huge for me, especially working on a beach. Pretty much every fire we have has the potential to be a wind-driven fire. And that's really big to know, especially inside of interior corridor structures, because if that's already vented out and you see it puffing away, trying to get pushed back against the pressure that's outside, and we open up that front door, we're going to get a blowtorch effect and it's going to push everything back at us. That's why it's important to read that building to find out what we're looking for. So I am actually, Steve, if you're cool with this, I'm going to try to share my screen real fast.
Sure.
If I can. This is my first time doing this, so I'm learning. Can you guys see?
Yeah, there we go.
Yep, I got it.
Nice job.
Okay. So, and this is my actual program, but just looking over here at this picture on the right, you can actually see here that you have what? What kind of smoke is that?
Dark.
Heavy, dark, turbulent compared to whatever else we have, right?
Yep.
What a big problem is, though, I got to move this out of the way. What a big problem is that people see these lights back here right away and they think fire, right? But look at that smoke. It's light and fluffy, correct? So that's not heat driven at all. But you could see here in the middle where the pressure's starting to get more pressurized than it is on the end. Mm-hmm. This is just an example of, you can see the fire is located back here. This is where the high heat is, the dark, turbulent, thick smoke. Coming out here, you have a little bit turbulent versus a little bit more dense. And down here, you can see it's light and airy. Pressure versus heat driven. Can you see the differences? And again, yep. It's not a class. I can't really give you a whole class on smoke reading, but it's something that you can actually visualize, which helps me as a person who wants to learn, understand things a little bit better. So this is just a little bit about reading smoke. Okay, you have your thick, dark smoke. Then you can see all the way here, it gets light and airy. All right, pressure driven versus heat driven. Okay, you can definitely see it's coming this way from left to right. Okay. So let's try that. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
You're
Hey,
back.
I'm pretty good at this. So that's our conditions that we're looking for. Our next thing up is location. The location is where we're actually going to use our camera to do a walk around and look for hot spots inside of the structure. It's going to be able to tell us where the heat buildup is. It's also going to tell us which way the flow path is going, which should match what the smoke is saying. So if I'm doing a walk up on that first picture that we just showed, my high heat should be on the left side, and then you should actually see it start to travel until it goes all the way out to the right side, but it's going to come up in a kind of like a V. The reason why is because it's traveling that way in the flow path. So an example is, if I'm walking around and I have an enclosed structure with nothing showing, but I do have heat or smoke coming out, pushing out, as I do my walk around, I come around the A side and I have nothing showing. As I'm walking down the Bravo side, as I get to the Bravo Charlie corner, I start to see a little heat signature on the window frames, right? Because they're metal, they're going to track the heat. And then I move on and I start to see a lot of heat up on that wall. And as I turn to the Charlie side, the further away I get from that Bravo corner, the less heat I have there in my heat signature. That means it's located in the Bravo Charlie corner. All right, so the Alpha Bravo corner. No, I was right, sorry, the Bravo Charlie corner. So why is that important? It's important because it's going to be able to tell me things like where the fire area is, which way the flow path is going. It's going to be able to tell me where the best access is. Just because you have a front door doesn't mean it's always the best access. And that's one thing I try preaching to everybody. If I could come in the kitchen on the backside and just make a right and put the fire out, it's a lot better than going through that 2,000 square foot home to try to get to that corner. Another thing is for ventilation purposes and for vehicle placement. When you're looking at this, you may say, hey, this may be where I want my truck set up based off of what this apartment building or complex is showing me. What the thermal imager will also show And just to give you an example of what I'm looking at is I'm going to pull up another picture here. Let's see if this is the right one. Yep. So let me see if I can make this bigger. You guys can see that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So here I am looking at this picture. This is a thermal picture of a building. All right. Now keep in mind that all we see is smoke, right? We can't see the heat, do we? Right? How do you measure heat? Back in the day, we used to say what? Our ears would burn, right, Steve?
Right.
When our ears got hot, we backed out, correct?
Sure. Yep.
Or people tell me that they pull their wristlet down to feel for heat, or they say that they spray water and if it doesn't come back down, it's hot. Well, guess what? That's 212 degrees. To me, 200 degrees is still hot, right? So you can't see heat. The only way to measure heat is actually with thermal imager. And this image, to me, a picture tells 1,000 words, right? So here's our direct temperature measurement. Do we care about that in a fire?
No.
No. Excellent. All right. I'm looking at the front door. This is where we need to make our access. What does this picture tell us? How low is that heat banked down?
Boy.
That heat is banked down to the floor. All right. So I'm 300 degrees at the floor. Is this the door we should be going into, or should we try to find a different method of entry if possible? Right. Just things to look at. These are glass windows. I know you say, well, Joe, you said that you can't see through windows, right? Well, guess what? These are single pane windows. They're not low emissivity glass. We changed to low emissivity glass because of all the heating and cooling regulations. We want to keep the sun out, keep the heat away, and also with the hurricane windows. So single pane glass, you actually can see through. All right. But if you look at the white around, that's the window frames. That's what I'm talking about. That's your heat signature cues or clues around your window frame. All right. Now keep in mind too that just because you see this, it doesn't mean that it's fire. It's just heat. It could be heat in the convection waves. It could be flame. Okay, we don't know because we're not seeing it visually. We're not seeing it optically. We're seeing it thermally. So if before, right? If I saw this, I'd probably force that door open, and what would happen? I'd probably get hit. I'd probably get hit, right? So now that I see this, I'm probably going to 3D that door first, right? And I'm going to hose down the whole front of that building to try to see if I could get a change in the thermal condition before I force that door. Does that make sense?
It does.
Makes perfect sense.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think oftentimes some people are still afraid of wasting water by putting water on the door. But as you mentioned with Captain Starnes, is that one of the things that he has shown with Max Firebox, and their little Firebox demonstration, is that putting that water on that door can give you a direct entry to where you want to go, where you feel you need to go, but you can do it safely once you've cooled down that door, because it reduces that temperature.
You're actually basically trying to condition that room. Like, listen, you show up on this and you have this here, and let's say you have a nice bunch of little gardenias just to the left of that door. I'm pretty sure Mrs. Jones is going to love the fact that you're watering her gardenias. All right. But when you pull that nozzle to the front door, you call for water. What do you have to do? You have to flow it. You have to flow it for two reasons. One is so that you get the air out, and the other one is so that the engineer can get a proper PSI number or GPM number of pressure off that hose, right? Then I could go ahead and, if I'm going to spray anyway, spray the house down. All right. It'll take all those voids in that house or any place that it can breathe, and it'll take in that water and it'll travel to cool it along the way. And that's what we need to do. We need to cool down the house before we make entry. Because if this is at 300 degrees at the floor, is anybody living behind that door?
Mm-mm.
I'll ask Duff, because this is his thing right here. Duff, is anybody living behind that door?
No.
At 300 degrees at the floor?
Nope.
No. So we have to make it tenable, right, for us. So that's just an example of using a thermal imager on a size up to show you exactly what you're looking for. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And I don't want to get too far off topic here, but there is one thing that I did want to touch on when we're looking at temperature. And that's at 187 degrees for 20 seconds, the unprotected airway fails. So imagine that at floor level where our victims are most likely to be, or 3 or 4 feet above floor level. If we don't do something to correct that situation for the occupants that are in that building who are most likely in pajamas or maybe nothing at all, they don't have much time. So heat is definitely something that we need to address, and we need to address it early.
And you know, it's something that we can control.
Absolutely.
You know, and we can control it by either what? Cooling or choking, right?
Mhm.
I mean, there's methods we can utilize. And this is something I teach the rescues all the time. You could go in there and shut doors all day. It's going to make a huge difference for us with the water, you know? So that's location. That's a pretty good hit, right? Conditions, locations.
Yep.
Utilities. Utilities, I'm looking at electric, right? I'm looking at, what do I have? Electric, let me pull up my pictures.
Natural gas.
Natural gas, propane. I also have solar is a real big thing now.
Mm-hmm.
So let me go to those real quick. So electrical, some people have elevated electrical, some people have in-ground electrical. Do you guys up north Florida, do you guys have in-ground with all the storms you guys been having?
Yeah, actually, my neighborhood is underground utilities. Electric's all underground.
All right, we're still above ground here. So basically what we're doing is, I'm trying to find my screen share thing real quick.
Yeah, most of our area up here is above ground, but a lot of the neighborhoods are going to underground utilities.
All right, let's talk about utilities real quick. Here we have our utility pole, right? We know that we have up to 35,000 volts on our primary wire, right? The transformer is what makes it to the drop line, which makes it 240. The lower lines are our communication wires. There are two ways to look at this. Is you have an above ground, which then goes to your box, or you have an underground, which comes underground and into your box. Usually, especially here in Florida, I know it's different in other places, but wherever you find your box on the other side, it's usually your fuse panel. Can you guys agree with that?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
It's usually how it is. Sometimes you'll find stuff where, if I can find this picture, it's brilliant. It's an electrical line that actually runs along the wall. But I can't find it. So electricity is one, right? So propane is another. And just like propane, you can have above ground or below ground. All right. The thing to remember about propane is that your main shutoffs are on the tanks. A problem with propane is that a lot of homes have them, but we don't pre-plan homes. So that's an issue for us because sometimes we don't know until we show up. And here you can see that you have a propane tank on the left, right, above ground. On the right side, all you're going to see is a cap. Pre-planning your apartments and condos and businesses are really important to find out what you're looking at there. Natural gas is different. Natural gas, I'll do this one here. Everybody's seen those. Our natural gas is different. Exterior natural gas actually has shutoffs that we need to use a wrench with, or the other side of a Halligan or something like that, the fork end, in order to turn that off. They do have shutoffs on the inside as they branch off the regulator, but the best thing you can do is shut down the whole house. Now keep in mind that you don't have to do all of this stuff. You could relay this information to the next incoming, but if it's outside and you can hit it real quick, why not knock it down? A big problem with us is generators. Our external generators are made to turn off as soon as we lose power. What does that mean when we shut down the power to the house? What's going to happen to the generator?
It's going to kick
It's
in.
gonna kick on. So even though we think the power's out, guess what? The generator just kicked in. So that's something that we need to be aware of at all. Also, inside, you're going to see you have some shutoffs that you can do, and usually on the other side, right next to the panel. It's usually right next to each other. And then the last utility I'm going to talk about is solar panels. solar panels are new to me. They're newer down here. You would think that living in Florida, more people would have them, but they're not cheap. One thing I learned about solar panels, and this is a great way to put it, is these things here are always making power as long as there's light on them. Even the lights from the fire apparatus will charge these solar panels. I did not know that. And then here's something else I learned is that this is what comes off of your solar panels on the right-hand side of the inverter. That is always charged. And the way that it was taught to me is that all of that is potential energy. Think of it as a hose line. You have a 2.5 that's charged, that's shut down. There's still a lot of energy in that line. Once you open it up, it's going to kick back, correct?
Right.
Okay. So never do any operations anywhere where that line coming off to the inverter is at, because it is always charged. And that's like 600 volts coming to your inverter. And then whenever you shut down your solar panels, you want to shut down your AC disconnect, and you want to shut down your DC, your inverter and your DC and your AC. So you want to shut them both off. So I always thought that was pretty interesting to learn, because I never had a class on solar panels. Have you guys?
I have not, no.
Several years ago.
And are they pretty prominent down here in Florida? I'd say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, more.
We just put ours up a year ago.
There you go.
Yeah.
So Steve, we're all coming to do a class at your house, brother.
Okay.
Hands on.
But I'll tell you, I mean, I didn't know about it. So I said, hey, I need to learn this stuff, because now what? That's part of my size up. I need to know that, hey, we probably shouldn't be going into that garage from that corner or whatever, you know what I mean? Or maybe we shouldn't be doing roof ops over there on the other side, because those panels are always lit or always charged. We don't know this stuff. So that's my utilities. So we did conditions, smoke, right? Fire, wind. Location with a TIC. We're finding what? Flow path and our heat buildup. Utilities, we had power, propane, natural, solar. All right, so now we're up to E, right? So I can spell, see? Our E is actually for exposures, and there are two different types of exposures. And now I'm going to get into Duffy's wheelhouse, because I know this is his baby right here. Internal and external exposures. All right, I break them up into exterior now, exterior later, interior now, interior later. And depending on who you have coming and what resources you have available may determine what you need to do. Sometimes your exterior now is going to take priority. Or one thing that I teach my engineer is that if we have a hydrant, and we're pretty lucky where we have hydrants, I know a lot of people aren't, there's no reason why you as an exterior engineer cannot hit that exposure while we're doing our inside work. We need to start realizing too that we're going to do a lot more than just our job. All right, an engineer should be what? Helping pull line. He should be putting the truck in pump. He should be getting us all of our tools. He should also be utilizing as an exterior secondary line if needed. He could also pull the secondary line to the front door, or a backup line, whatever you guys call it. So the engineer should always be working. I know it's a tough job. I'm going to tell you, I think on a fire scene is probably one of the hardest jobs of them all, because you're getting pulled in 18 different directions. All right. So does anybody have anything to talk about the two things we went over so far, the utilities, the location? We're good with all that stuff?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with all that.
Okay. So exposures, let's go into exposures. Exposures. You got me live? Am I on?
Yep.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Let's talk about exposures. Is this a now or an eventual exposure?
Now.
No.
That's a now exposure, right? You can see that you have actually flames impacting that house. That is a now exposure. Is this a now or eventual? That's an eventual. So even if, and I know that, you know, hitting it hard from the yard and all that stuff, I'm not here to fight that, but you have flame impingement here, you should probably try to knock this back a little bit before you make any type of entry, because why? We can. and it has impingement on this house. Do we agree?
I agree. The only other thing I would say on that, Joe, is, you know, depending on staffing levels, obviously that makes a difference, but this would be a good thing where maybe we consider hitting the fire and sending the crew inside so we can accomplish two things simultaneously.
Well, I'm thinking, Sean, that yes, I have to go ahead and charge my line and flow it anyway. Why
Right.
not flow it there?
Exactly. Yep.
You know, then my engineer can get his settings, and then if worst comes to worst, he could pump the second line or whatever he wants into there to protect us. And again, it goes down to what you have. I only have 3 people. One of them is an engineer.
Right.
So I'm probably going to knock that down the best I can, you know, and then go inside and see what I could find.
So let me ask you this question while we're on that. We'll just go with your staffing level, which is 3.
Yep.
Is your engineer trained to hit this fire, pull the line, hit this fire, and start knocking it down while you're doing your 360 and your firefighters helping you do other things?
Well, it depends on what I have. If I have that, I'll probably have my firefighter just pull that front line because the door is over here to the left. So I would have him pull that line, flow it there, have him set it and forget it. And by the time I do my 360, that should hopefully be knocked down enough where I could come around and then we could get inside.
Sure. So utilizing your staffing levels to the best of your ability. So essentially, you're still doing 2 things at once. You're addressing the fire and you're doing your 360. So by the time you get around and you're ready to make entry, hopefully this fire should be knocked down quite a bit.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I could take a picture. I could take this picture, all right, and I could bring it to a kindergarten class, and I could ask the kids, hey, where do you spray the water? And they're going to say right there.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I don't know why I have to tell my firefighters that, but I mean, but there it is. You know, I mean, does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So again, and I'm also at the point where if I have a hydrant, I rather get that water supply. Keep in mind too, I'm on a confused ladder truck, which is a quint. All right. So I only have 400 gallons. Now I can still do a lot of work with 400 gallons, but a fully involved room is probably going to eat a lot of that. So that's our exterior later. So let's talk about internal exposures. Looking at this stuff, and I know this is your cup of tea. Where's the first area you would search this house?
Me? I'd search right there at the top, closest to the fire.
The floor above, right?
Yep.
Right next to it. Yep. That would be the most imminent. That's an internal now exposure. All right. We're going to find the direction of the flow path. We're going to think of survivable spaces being the most urgent. High rises is always what? The room next to it and the floor above. Now using my thermal imager, this is where our TIC comes into play. We have 200 degrees in these 2 rooms to the floor. Where should the flow path is coming this way. Where should my next room be?
Right
It should
there.
be the 3rd room in, right? On the left, or the room on the left.
Mm-hmm.
2nd floor. So that's pretty much what I have there for survivable spaces and exposures. So survivable spaces is going to be important because when we roll up on scene, that should be our most urgent area to search. Do we all agree with that?
I agree.
All right. So what are we taught in fire school? Everybody walk in the door and do a left or right-handed search, right?
Yes.
Okay. So basically what do we have to do now? We have to teach oriented search. We have to teach TIC directed, TIC led, point to point, right? Different ways to do things, oriented search. But if you know it's in the Alpha Bravo corner, get to that Alpha Bravo corner. Shut that door down, right? If you don't have any water, search the room, shut the door, and then search from the fire room back. And the funny thing is that if you guys ever seen it, the book actually says search from the fire room back, but we teach everybody to make a left-hand turn and search all the way along the way until you get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's really kind of weird to me. So I think that if I'm doing a walk around and I see where my high heat's located in the flow path direction, I can then turn around and say, hey, when I come in that room and I look left, I know it's in that corner. I could just go there. And if I have a camera, the flow path is going to be coming right at me, telling me where I need to go.
Absolutely. One of the things I want to touch on there, because you mentioned it, and I think it confuses people. We really need to get away from left hand, right hand, and say left or right. Because when I tell somebody who may or may not know the difference, hey, left hand search, instinctively, left hand on the wall. I don't leave that wall with my left hand. But in the same sentence, we're trying to teach them oriented or TIC-led, TIC-directed searches. It would be better if we just said, hey, go left, right? Search left.
Yeah.
That you're still telling them to go that direction, but by taking the word hand out of it, their mind doesn't focus on the hand. So
Well,
you're allowing them to be more efficient.
that makes sense. And we actually did that with our forcible entry too. We no longer do inward or outward swinging. We do away from us or towards us.
Sure. Yep. Same concept, right?
Same concept. Yeah. And that makes sense to me. For those of you who are listening who may not know, TIC directed search, all right, or let's start with TIC led. A TIC led search I like to use in a big area or great rooms. It's where I come in and I scan the room and I scan 7 sides. I know a box only has 6, but I scan 7. I do up, down, left, right, front, behind me, and then I do the inside. And the reason why is because I want to see where the flow path direction is. I want to see what room I'm in, and I want to see the temperature of the materials in that room. Because if those rooms are off-gassing already or I have pyrolysis occurring, I need to condition those rooms before I make entry and go through it. All right, so I think of each compartment as another box. Okay, so I come in, I make the room, I do my 7-sided size up, and then I tell the guys, come with me, we're going over here. I show them where I'm going, and we start going that way. That's TIC led. TIC directed is great for bedrooms, where I go ahead and I make an entry, right? And I'm at a bedroom and I do a 7-sided size up. I find my egress, I find my access, I go up, down, left, right, forward, back, and inside. And then I tell my guy, hey, look here, I cannot see behind that bed or in that closet, or I have something, an anomaly on that bed that I don't know what it is, but it's a big lump on that bed, go check. And then I send him to go in and I could direct him from the door while still watching conditions at that door. So that's TIC directed. A point to point, to me, is a no-brainer. If I walk in and I see the flow path coming from my left-hand side, I know that I need to turn around to the left and go straight at it. That's the quickest way between 2 points is a straight line. Let's do that. That's a point to point. So if I make entry into a room, a building, or a house, and I look in and I see, hey, look, it's straight ahead in that room. There's no reason to hug walls and go all the way around. Get to where you need to go, stay oriented, and get to that in a point-to-point quick method. Search that fire room, control the door of the fire, and then work your way back. Yep. So those are the 3 TIC type of searches that we're discussing here.
Yeah, I appreciate you clarifying that, because I know that can be confusing for some people. The only other thing about the walls and stuff like that is, you could stay oriented even if you happen to pick up your camera, just take a quick scan and drop your camera if it's clicked to you. It's not something that's made to stay focused on. Like, you don't want to put it in front of your face and just sit there, right? Because now your situational awareness is kind of right there in your camera. And quick scan, do your direction, and send people off. And that's where I think being oriented helps too, because if you're coming down a hallway and you got the thermal imager, let's say you have 2 searchers. You're doing that quick scan. You see what you got. You can send one guy left. You can send one guy right. You could send one guy to check that room. You send one guy to check the other room, however your layout is. But that keeps you in that area where your situational awareness and you're constantly monitoring the environment around you, and also scanning to get to your next point, right? When these guys come out of this room, if it's empty, we're going here. So I think that kind of gets forgotten about too with thermal imaging, is we get so focused on what's in that camera that we're forgetting to get the big picture why all of this stuff is going on.
So some of the biggest things to remember with the thermal imaging and search is that the TIC firefighter always has the perspective, all right, because he can see what other people can't. Another problem is that they become too dependent on it, all right? So they'll look and they'll just say, all right, I'm going here, and they'll hold it in front of them and use it like a map. It's not a map. It's used to get you a picture of where you're going, and then it's up to you to get there, okay? I tell people it's like for old people, because old people used to have maps. We didn't have Google, you know, where we used to tell us exactly where to turn. It would be like, I need to go there. Here's 3 different ways to get there. Go figure it out, you know? And then the other issue we have with them is that depth perception is a big problem with thermal imagers. And if you have it in front of your face the whole time, you're going to miss a lot of stuff. And you're also going to not realize how far away you are from things, which is going to cause a problem as well. And then, of course, communication, Sean, like you were saying, you need to tell everybody what's going on around you. It's still the same. Hey, listen, this is what we have. It's back here in this back room. We're going to shoot down this hallway, right? And then we're going to go ahead and search these 2 rooms. Got it? Got it? Good. Let's go. So that's pretty much it for that. I think I hit all the terminology and topics too on the search stuff, right? TIC driven, TIC led, TIC directed, and point to point, right?
Yeah, that's what I got too. So
yeah, good. So
It's good stuff, bro.
Yeah, that's it's a lot of information put up in a small amount of time. But I think utilizing C.L.U.E.S as a first responding unit is going to help people make intelligently aggressive decisions on find out where they need to go, where the priorities should be, and relaying the information that needs to be given to the next incoming crew. Like an example is I find my conditions. I know I have black turbulent smoke in the Alpha Bravo corner traveling towards the Alpha Charlie corner, or the Bravo Charlie corner, right? Then I go ahead and I look at my TIC and it confirms it's going that way. I know I have my heat signatures and stuff like that. I find out where tenable space is for people, make that a priority for my search. Utilities I can announce on the way. Hey, let you know utilities are located in the garage on the Charlie Delta side. There's a propane tank on the Charlie Delta side as well with a generator. I don't have, if I could hit it as I walk by, that's great. If not, I give that information to them. They'll come and hit it down. Exposures interior and exterior, that's going to make our decision on where we need to do. Do we need to knock this down to prevent further problems, or is it something that we can wait for? And then, of course, searchable, survivable spaces, which is what I know Duffy preaches as well, about the importance of trying to find out where we need to go in order to give that person over there the best opportunity of survival.
Right.
Sure. I just let me touch on that last little bit there, Joe, is something that I learned from Chief Starnes was when we're doing that survivable space and we're analyzing that, 2 questions need to come to mind immediately. 1, do we need to remove the environment from the victim or remove the victim from the environment? Which one of those things has to happen right now? And that's going to aid you in where you need to do your first things and what those things are.
An example of that is, can we spray water, knock it down, and leave them there? Can we just shut the door and take them out of the environment altogether? You know, and I know you and I have talked about this a lot with Beyond the Door VES too, you know, where it's like, hey, guess what? I could just shut the door and we're good. You know, you guys do what you got to do downstairs, put the fire out, you know, and then we'll take care of the victim. You know, there are times where you may have things in control where all you need to do, like you said, is take them out of that environment. You know, and door control and stuff like that is really easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else. I don't know, Nick, do you have anything? Steve?
Honestly, I mean, I just real quick, and I got to go, you know, to work. Believe it, yeah, I got a guy holding for me. So, but anyway, just a success story, you know, using C.L.U.E.S, Joe. And I talked to Sean about this before we got on the show today. And we had a fire Saturday night, 3-story beach house. Of course, you know, weather was kind of cruddy, raining, kind of cool. A lot of smoke on Division 2. First engine truck went in, and we're having a little bit of issues finding the seat of the fire. And we came in third due, got assigned writ initially. So we did a lap. I mean, nobody wants to be yard shepherd, but we tried to be proactive. And so we did a lap, and I took the TIC with me, and kind of using the whole C.L.U.E.S thing. You walk around, and so I got to the Charlie side, and we got through there was a fence. We got through there and notated the pool, let command know, and got looking at the Charlie side of the building with the TIC. And hurricane windows, of course, you can't see through the windows, but we did pick up some heat signatures with a window frame and on the wall. And so radioed command, let them know what we had. And it was in the Bravo Charlie corner. And basically, upon further investigation, you could actually see the window was all blacked out and starting to crack a little bit. And there was quite a bit of heat. There was some smoke just starting to wisp out of the sideboard there on the exterior wall. But radio that to command, and within probably 30, 40 seconds, the crew had located that bedroom. We could actually hear them, spraying water on the interior from outside. But just kind of a cool thing. It happened Saturday night, and here we are talking about it, and it really played a very crucial role in speeding up the process of finding the fire, right? So we were able to find the location quicker by using the TIC from the outside.
That's huge. Thanks for sharing that, man. That's awesome. I'll tell you, I've been teaching this class for a while, and I've had a few people come back to me with emails and stuff stating how they were third and fourth due, and people were complaining they couldn't find the fire, and they walked in with a TIC, and they were like, it's right here, or it's right there, or and there's nothing worse than making your first due look bad. Imagine your first, second, and third due all look bad.
Yeah. Hey, man, you got to take what you can get when you're writ.
Well, strong work by you, bro. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those tools. Like I said, I think if people would take the time to utilize it more, I think we'd be a little more effective with what we're doing, a little more efficient, and that's the goal. That's the goal, is to minimum staffing. Suburban departments. We don't have a million guys to throw at a fire. Why not? Let's get it right the first time, right? Let's do our job right the first time. Let's make good, solid decisions and utilize every tool that we have available to us to do that.
Absolutely.
I agree.
That's the best sum up we could give, Nick. Thank you. That's the best way of summing it up. That really was. That's what this was all about. And that's what the whole series of Make Do is going to be about, is every guest who's going to be here is going to come and help us learn a little bit more about the job we do in a specific area. And hopefully by our viewers and listeners listening to all our episodes of Make Do, they're going to get basically a free education with some ideas, new thoughts, how other people are doing it. But basically, all of us are in that same situation. We're not in urban settings. We can't depend on immediate backup right behind us. We have to take care of what we have to take care of once we're there. And hopefully the next crew is going to be in as soon as they can get there. But we have to be able to hold down the fort until they do, to the best of our ability.
We still got a job to do.
Exactly. Always will.
And those people are dependent on us.
Oh, boy, do they ever. Now more than ever, actually. We think, well, maybe in the old days where things were different. Well, no, even with everything we have today, we have to keep one step ahead of technology's development, because that's the only way we're going to be successful in the jobs. Whether career volunteer doesn't make any difference, but it's the jobs that we do, and we want to do them to the best of our ability. So
Absolutely.
I want to thank our guest, Captain Joe DeVito, and I want to thank my co-partners here, Captain Nick Peppard and Sean Duffy, our hosts of Make Do, for another great session. This is actually our first learning session, and we couldn't have had a better guest than to have Captain Joe with us. And Joe will be back with us in October, just with me on a one-on-one, as we talk about personal accountability on the fire ground and in the fire service in general. So, gentlemen, thank you all very much.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me, guys. I really do appreciate it. If you guys have any questions, it's really hard to teach a thermal imaging class online,
Sure.
but I hope that I at least piqued your interest, so you want to learn more about it. And if you do, by all means, feel free to reach out, man. I'll give you any information I have, and we'll try to make it work out for you.
Sounds great. All right, folks, if you have any other questions, you can forward it to us here at dalmatproductoutlook.com. We're still using that email when the new one comes out in next week. But we'll always be happy to answer your questions and get you in contact with our guests. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Stay safe. Stay well, everybody. And we'll be back with another episode of 5 Alarm Task Force next week. Stay well.